Hello everyone and welcome back for another edition of 8 Minutes with Aaron. I am of course your host Aaron, and today we're going to talk about my experience and my whole day at New York Comic Con. So let's get rolling with a fresh edition of this guy right here, Aaron. If you haven't already grabbed a drink and a nice snack, maybe you should, because this is going to be quite the tale. It all begins in the morning when I woke up and had to go to the bus. Well, as soon as I walked outside to go to my car, because I had to get my earbuds to listen to some music while I was taking the bus to New York, I noticed that the bus went by. Now, my phone said 6:07 and the bus was supposed to come at 6:15, so I got a little bit scared. So as I'm waiting for the bus, 6:15 goes by, no bus. 6:16, 6:17, 6:18, at 6:19, finally the bus came. The anxiety was starting to roll on because if I miss that bus, fuck, I'm screwed out of New York and Comic-Con. So I get on the bus, and as we're going to the first stop, which would be the next street up, the bus dies. I'm like, what? The lady gets on the monitor and says, when we get to X Street, we're going to all have to get out because I'm not taking the people through the tunnel because, of course, I take a trolley. And I'm like, what the fuck? No, I'm definitely going to be late. So she drops us off. I'm skitzing out in my head. I'm like, oh shit, I'm not going to get the fuck to the right place. And then another bus came right on. Everyone ran right on in. And I finally got to the next station. Now, I wasn't too sure what side to get on. I had the Escalade. I looked like a little bit of a tourist. But finally, I got to the bus with about 15 minutes to spare. So I made it. I got on the bus and we were off to New York. Now, the only thing I didn't like about the bus to New York was that people were talking and sneezing really loud. And I've got my, sound noise canceling things in my earbuds, and I can still hear these assholes. And I'm like, God damn it, like, shut the fuck up. I'm sorry. I was tired or whatever. So finally, bus gets to New York. I'm right across the street from, the convention center at Javits. I go into Javits, everything's cool. My buddy says, hey, go get this thing. It was like a little sticker John. I didn't get the sticker John. So I waited in line, nice people. Had a good talk, talked about Transformers, talked about Marvel shit. They weren't really big anime fans. It's okay. And then at 9:55, boom, they started to let everybody in. Now, as you know, I had an 11 o'clock appointment at the Funko Pop booth. So I made my way up there, made it up the stairs. I've got some footage on my way to the booth. I'll show it in another video. It was really exciting, really fun, and I met up with my buddy Brian, who was standing in line for me so I can, jump in the line to get the Funko Pops, etc., etc. Here's the problem that I ran into. There were about 4 or 5 Funko Pops that I wanted. I wanted Brooke, I wanted Lucci, I wanted the Powerpuff Girls, I wanted Itachi, and I wanted the Batman Beyond. Well, guess what sold out before I got to the booth? Lucci and Itachi. Now, these weren't like store exclusives or Funko, New York Comic Con exclusives just there. You could have bought them online, but I passed on that shit because I thought since there was a plentiful amount, I would just be able to get up to the booth. That was the wrong choice for me to make. I made the error. I fucked up. Now I'm out of Lucci and then Itachi. Kinda sucks. I'm kind of bitter about it. But I am sure in the end it will all work out because once the New York Comic Con's over on Sunday, everything will be dropping in prices on eBay and Facebook and shit like that. I'll get my Lucci and I will definitely go get my Itachi. Let's move on. That was one of the negatives that I had. Another negative that I had was that when my buddy Brian was in line with me, I just wanted them to bring him into the line and shit like that. He wasn't getting anything, wasn't gonna buy anything like that. And then you got fucking this lady who's like, nah, he can't. I'm like, why not? I'm like, who gives a shit? I'm like, he's my brother or whatever. She's like, we're not allowed to do that. But when I stood in line, there were so many people who had a friend or a partner with them. And I'm like, what the fuck is this all about? I even asked the lady, I said, excuse me. I'm like, did this lady say anything about your daughter being in line? She's like, no. I'm like, excuse me, how about you? No. I'm like, all right, well, maybe I'll yell at this lady when I was done. I didn't yell at this lady. I met a nice dude in line. We talked. I got him some Funko Pops. I made like $20 on top when I bought him some Funkos that I really didn't want. I got Brian everything that he needed. I didn't get, my Lucci and Itachi. I was a little sad, but I tried to move on. And then we walked around the whole entire New York Comic Con area. Now, the one thing I did notice was it wasn't as packed as last year. And I know I say that every year that when I go, it doesn't seem as packed. But this year, it seemed very spacious. I wasn't really like clambering through people. And it didn't seem like they had a lot of things that were interesting me. They had like a big One Piece thing for Egghead Island, but that wasn't anything special. They just had the big Luffy that they had for a couple of years. They had no Dragon Ball Super or no Dragon Ball anything there. They had the little bit of a Digimon thing that I tried to play the card game, but I had to, schedule a time, and I didn't know that, so I didn't do that. I went to the wrestling things to see what wrestlers are there. I didn't see anyone that I really wanted to see. But one big shout out I gotta say to my buddy Brian. He met up with his boy, Orange Cassidy. They used to be roommates, and they saw each other, and Orange Cassidy was like real receptive. Was like, yo, dude, like, how have you been? Like, I can't believe you're fucking here. Like, I'm so excited. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Now, Brian didn't stay really long, but I think, OC wanted to hang out with him and do a little catch-up and shit like that. And now, I didn't say anything to OC. I ain't a big fan of his, and, whatever. And I'm not a big fan of AEW in general, but if a D-Bry was there, or I saw Danhausen or MJF, yeah, I would probably try to be like, yo, what up? Boom, boom, boom. Didn't happen, so that was my experience with the wrestlers. Now, I walked around the places, I looked at different stands, there was nothing really that, ran and like, hey, Aaron, buy me. There were a couple of boxes, but when I opened these boxes up, they're, fandom or category-wise, like that, The Office. They had Demon Slayer, they had a Dragon Ball Z, they had no One Piece, they had a various amount of things. They didn't have any Seinfeld, maybe if they had a Seinfeld one, I'd buy it too. They had DC, Marvel, video game stuff, and in these boxes you get hats and coffee mugs and shit like that. I was excited about maybe getting one of those, but since there was no One Piece or no Seinfeld, I was like, I ain't gonna get that. So the biggest thing there was this Disney Topps line. Now, the Disney Topps line was, if you got a wristband, you would come back between 4 and 6, and you can buy a collector's box. These boxes were going for $800 to $1,000 online, $800 to $1,000 online. I'll make that a little bit clear for whoever didn't understand that. And everybody wanted this. So we jumped in the line, me and Brian first, and as soon as we got up to the front of the line, that was it. They cut it off right before us. So we came back later. We definitely were happy that we got bands. And then my bus back to Philly was at 3:45. So I'm like, shit, I gotta move my bus. So I had to pay an extra $30 on top of that. Gotta move to 6:45. Go back in the line, we buy the box. As soon as I step out of the line, some dude's like, yo, I'll give you $600 for it. I'm like, yo, here's the box. Get the fuck out of here. Boom, I made a clean transaction. Because you know me, I will not do anything with this fucking box. It will sit in this goddamn office, and 3 to 4 months later, it's gonna be worth shit. Or it's going to be hard to sell, or I'm not just going to sell it because I'm just a bum. To make a long story short, I had to wait another 3 hours for my bus back to Philly. And the bus back to Philly wasn't any better than the bus to New York. So let me tell you something was really funny. I know I'm running out of time here. As I'm getting on the bus, and it was right across the street, so that was cool, and all that other stuff, we get on the bus, and the bus driver takes off at 7 o'clock. Well, I don't know if the people didn't know where to stand, but there were about 6 to 7 people running after this bus, screaming, yeah, yeah, and the bus driver is just ignoring the shit out of them. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so fucked up. I can't believe this shit. Eventually, they get on the bus, and the one last thing I want to say is, if you go on a fucking Megabus or anything like that, a Flixster, if you take a shit in the goddamn bathroom, fuck you, because that shit smells. Anyway, my whole New York Comic Con experience is going to get a middle because I can't decide whether it was good or bad. And my name is Aaron. Thank you for joining me with 8 Minutes with Aaron. I will see you next time. We're going to go more stuff, more things, and of course, more of me. I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.